All right, it is Tuesday, so it's officially Tire Talk Tuesday. And we're going to talk about some new tires today. We're going to look at some new fronts that we're working on. We've had a lot of requests for four-wheel drive tires. Something that is specifically for four-wheel drive fronts. There's not a lot out there right now. There's a couple of tires out there that are out there for, front tires, but they don't perform very well. So there's been a lot of requests for four-wheel drives. The challenge with four-wheel drive tires are that you don't want them overpowering the car, causing the car to, pull left or right. Four-wheel drive cars, they launch, wheels come up off the ground, you're turning to try to correct, comes back down, and then you hook, right? Because those front tires are spinning and pulling, they'll pull you left or right. So the challenge is to have a tire that steers the car well, maybe helps on the launch, but doesn't overcorrect your steering. And how do we do that? So a couple things. We are looking at a half paddle, somewhat half, we'll get into that measurement there, but a short paddle with some ribs that helps turn the car. This works great for low speed too, and just cruising around. But straight down the track. But if you are turning a little bit and the tire comes down, it doesn't pull you off into the fence or off track. So this is the design we've come up with. Been testing this the last couple weeks, and it's doing really well. I'm really lucky that I have a group of local guys that are passionate about drag racing, sand drag racing, and give really good feedback on these new designs. And they test them on a bunch of different cars. They are using GPS to track them. They're timing them. And they know when we have a design if it's good or bad. And we've had some bad ones you guys have never seen, but they're really good to know and a good gauge on when we come up with something new if it's going to work. I don't just come up with a design and go, yep, looks cool, should work, and then sell it. Almost everything, with some minor tweaks that aren't performance based, everything gets tested and ran for a while. Sometimes, a couple weeks, couple passes, sometimes a year before we release them. And that's because I don't want to release something that doesn't work. It's the whole point is to improve the industry, improve the cars, and come out with a good product. So that requires some testing to do that. And I'm very fortunate to have a group of guys that are local that do that. And we test in Huntington on the sand, so it's really light sand. So your mileage may vary depending on what kind of surface you're running on. If you're running on a track or some other types of surfaces, dirt. We are doing some testing on some other surfaces also with some of these tires back east and Midwest. But anyway, that's the design we're looking at right now. It is a two-piece tire. If any of you have followed me, I am a fan of the two-piece tire. We do this with the splits, but it is two halves of a tire. We have a ribbed half over here, and then we have the paddle and rib on this side. This allows us to do a couple things. If something changes, new design comes out, damage a tire, whatever, we just swap them out. But the cool thing about this is if we can change the rib design, keep the half, swap this out, or we buy another set of tires and we run a left and right together, and now we've got a cool little rib design that's a full paddle. So having the halves is really cool. So that's one of the reasons why we run it. It helps in the print process also, the way we do the printing, to get a little bit more detail on some of these ribs. But I'm a big fan of the half paddle because it gives you a lot of versatility. You can run, at two halves on the paddle side and get a lot of traction, or you could run two halves on. This is there we go. Two halves, with the ribs, and you got this, reverse kind of mohawk there. But this thing's going to steer like crazy. If you need lots of traction in your steering, this will do it. It's going to turn each way, right? So when thinking about designing the four-wheel drive front, I looked at designing a paddle that was going to help with the launch and then get out of the way, right? What does that mean? That means, launch the car, but once the car is moving, don't overcorrect, don't provide a lot of power to the ground, because most of the time those front tires are just barely tapping the surface, right? And they're really not doing much. They're just helping you steer a little bit when they come back down, but they're really not accelerating the car. And we've proved this because a lot of four-wheel drive cars will run smooths up front just so they don't overcorrect and cause them to go crooked. So really the launch, want to help get the car moving off the launch, get the weight transfer to the rear, and then get out of the way. One of the nice things about this design, I'll go over this tire in a minute, but you can see how those paddles are designed and they're swept outwards. What that does is on the launch, it throws the sand out away from the car instead of it throwing it into the back tire and under the car. Four-wheel drives, one of the biggest problems is throwing that loose sand from the front tire directly into the rear tire, right? So now the rear tire is struggling to get nice, clean, fresh sand that's compacted because all this fluffy sand is hitting it. That's causing resistance for the tire going down because all the sand's getting thrown at it, and it's struggling to find good traction. So that's another advantage to running a smooth or a tire that's not a full paddle in the front. So with this, and if you watch some of the videos when these come out, you'll see that this throws sand to the side a little bit, gets it out from the car and away from the rear tire. That, and aside from it just not being a really aggressive paddle, helps. But this will help get that car rolling, so you can get your power in quicker and not having to dial back your power so much off the line. And hopefully that relates to faster times and getting down the track first. I think they're going to do really well. Initial tests, they track really straight. We've been testing this design right here for the past week or two, and they track really straight. Cars go straight, and they're working well. How much are they doing as far as getting the car accelerating? That's still kind of to be determined. We'll have to modify the paddles going forward from that. But first thing we need to do is we need the cars going straight. You can't get the power down if you can't keep the car straight. So get the car going straight, and then we modify the paddle to either be less or more aggressive after that. So we're looking at that design. This design is for a UDR. Modified the paddle a little bit on this one. We went to a half paddle, right? So the paddle is actually half of the tire, and then the ribs are on the other half. On a four-wheel drive tire, I think this might be better than having that rib, down the middle, because this is going to give us a little bit more paddle for takeoff. So we might go with this design more so over this design. The problem with this design here, and this might work really well for, just a regular two-wheel drive car, so we might keep this for two-wheel drive. I have a little concerns over this being a really sharp ridge, so I'm probably going to take that down and round it a little bit, because it, if there's weight left on the car and it's sitting on the ground on a hot day, throwing it in your car, this is kind of going to be a fragile rib. So I don't know if I want to risk, people damaging that rib. It works really well, but it's going to be a neat tire that you're going to have to take care of if we keep that design. So if we take that, and we round it a little bit more, get the camera to focus here, we round it a little more, keep it from being so sharp, that's going to be less chance that is going to get damaged. It's not going to cut as hard into the surface. Soft sand, rounded, no problem. Really hard sand and dirt, this rib would probably work really well, because it's really going to cut into that surface. So we're going to have to find a happy medium in between that. But, the design, I think itself, is going to be, somewhere around this right here with that rib in the middle and a half tire for the four-wheel drive. Two-wheel drive, maybe we'll keep the 3 rib. I'll just dial, down the rib a little bit. Let's talk about size. And this gets a little complicated because the rib adds height to the tire, but is it usable height? Is it going to be height that's going to really throw off the balance on a four-wheel drive as far as keeping the size similar to the rears with the drivetrain? So this tire here is a 110 rim. If you're familiar with the fronts, This is the same rim diameter as a 110. These are 35 millimeters wide instead of the 30, but it's a 110 rim. But the overall diameter of the tire, because of the added rib height, is a 130. So instead of it being a 110, it's a 130. You go down to the carcass or down to that small paddle, it's a 110. So we're going to have that size. We are going to make this a little smaller at a 110 overall, which means it's going to be 110 up to the tip of the paddle, which makes it about a 100 equivalent tire. So we're probably going to have those two sizes. We're going to have a 150 equivalent front. So the Typhon and the buggies with the 150, we need a good tire for that one. So we're going to do a similar tire to this for the front in a 150 size, and then we're going to have a large tire that's going to be in the 190 range, somewhere around 190 or 200, maybe to the top of the rib, but it'll be around 190 or 200. Those are the sizes we're looking at first. Might change it a little bit. Really trying to lock in a UDR size and offset that fits good on the UDRs. I think running the UDRs without fenders is going to be the best, so you can optimize the tire that you can run. UDRs are a little unique. They normally run a pretty thin tire, and they're low. So they bottom out really easy and drag the belly when taking off. So ideally you want to get them on a tall tire. Get the bottom of the car up a little bit so it has some clearance, allows the paddles to dig longer on the launch. So UDRs might not fit in the wheel wells. If you're racing, that's just, that's going to be a drawback that you're going to have to do on that one. So anyway, so those are the sizes we're looking at. Kind of going more toward the zero offset wheels to tuck them in a little bit more. You can run the spacers accordingly if you want to, push that out more. You can do that, but I'm pushing some of these rims out more. That way they tuck in a little bit more and they're not so wide, especially on a front, right? We have a lot more flexibility on the fronts. So going that route. So with this new design, like I said, being a two-piece, if we look at the UDR here, I'm calling it a UDR. It's a 165 by 60 tire. I think that might be the sweet spot on some of the UDRs, 160 or so, 165, a little bigger. But this design here, we tested this design on a front, slightly modified design of this one, but similar. It's really loose. It steers a lot. So I'm not sure if this is a good one to run just two of these together, but it does run a little loose in the front with that design. So great turning tire, maybe not a great drag tire. And then again, looking at, since this is larger, you'll get a little better perspective of this. If we take two of these guys, put those together, now we've got, just a really great turning tire. Not going to help you for launches and takeoffs, but it's going to turn really, really well. So when you're getting these paddles and when you're looking at these paddles, ideally you're running this rib is going toward the inside and this is going toward the outside. That way when you're turning, you're pushing against the paddles there, and it's not a sharp edge. It's not going to just instantly plow and dig into the sand. It's going to rely on the trailing, wheel there to pull it across instead of pushing it across, if that makes sense. That design works a little better, and it doesn't overcompensate your turning and your steers, when you're in the sand. So typically you'll always see that to where, that paddle or textured side is toward the outside of your wheels. But this is versatile. You can change it. You can swap it around. If you need more traction on that side, you think it works better for you, flip them over and run the ribs on the outside, and then you'll get a lot more traction into your turns instead of it floating across a little bit more. So but yeah, lots of different options there. We're still doing some more testing this week, maybe this weekend. But these will probably be up on the website maybe this weekend. We'll run a couple specials, a couple of deals. This gray in person, it looks amazing. The cameras don't do justice. People that have picked up these new tires, and I've given them to them, they've said the pictures and they just don't do justice for how cool they look. And they are a really cool paddle. And if you look closely, if I can get this to focus, these paddles, these little ridges here, they're high and low. They alternate high and low, high and low. And the idea for that is to have a lot of traction off the start, because all those paddles are going to be in the sand, but then, like I said, getting out of the way once it gets down track a little bit, and it's going to be riding on the top of those other paddles. And then when you go to steer, all those paddles aren't digging into the ground, right? You're only getting the tops, right, of those other paddles, so it won't pull you really hard when you're steering. That's the idea. In theory, we have good ideas, but sometimes they don't translate. And it's all going to vary on a car, right? You have a really heavy car, it might react different to a lighter car. You're running more weight in the front, so your wheels are running, more down in the front. That's going to change also. So, again, it's going to have to be a little different probably for each car, but I think we've got a pretty good happy medium. They're performing really well. So far, they're tracking super straight. We're not having any issues with steering, and when you're turning around at the end of the track, they turn really well. Instead of having to fight that turn down at the bottom back in because your tires are slipping. So, but they're doing really well. So, but anyway, that's the update. Today is the 12th of August, and again, look for these here probably within the next week. They will be on the website, and normal launches, we get backlogged. So get your orders in early if you're interested, or you think these might be beneficial for you. I think they're going to do really well on a two-wheel drive car also, the skinnier ones. But really I think where they're going to shine is on the four-wheel drive cars. But two-wheel drive, they're going to do well also. They're going to help with the steering a little bit and not float so much down the track. So if you find yourself having to try to steer and your wheels are sideways and you're just not going anywhere, these will help compensate for that and allow you to steer. Run a really strong servo, that way you have some control over that, and you're not fighting the servo, because these are going to dig a little bit more than just a standard smooth paddle. People forget about the servos. You got to have that strength to pull that tire back around when that sand's pushing against it. So, but keep that in mind. So, but there's an idea of the rim design here without a paddle on it. But everything else pretty much the same. Rims, materials, all of that's the same. The only difference on these UDRs is we run a 6x30 because the UDR hubs are a 6x30 hub with 17 millimeters. And then we will make this rim available in an 8x32 also. So we'll have both of those. And then the 150s will be an 8x32 because everyone runs 17 millimeters on those cars. No one's running 12 millimeters. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions, send me a message or comment, and I'll try to get back to everyone. But any suggestions or anything you would like to see as far as design or ideas, problems that maybe you're dealing with that you've noticed, maybe your particular track or surface area, and we'll try to build that into the next design. So hope you enjoyed the update, and we'll talk to you soon.